Real people, real radio. Wherever you are, make it TFR. The Truth Frequency Radio.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Truth Warrior. I am your host, David Whitehead. I'm assuming we are live and on the air. Just had a little bit of technical difficulties there with Skype. I know, what else is new, right? But we are here. We are live. And today it is Sunday, February 8th, and we are broadcasting live from truthfrequencyradio.com. And as a special treat, if you wanted to see the actual show, we are doing a live stream broadcast simultaneously with this show on modernknowledge.ca. I have my good friend and partner, founder of Modern Knowledge, Chris Russak. He's here with me in studio, and we're going to be speaking to two guests this evening. We're going to have a jam-packed show for you. First hour, we're going to be hearing from Stanton Friedman, the one and only Stanton Friedman. We're very excited to speak with him again. And in the second hour, we'll be joined by Dr. Robert Schock, talking about ancient civilizations and a whole bunch of different stuff. So this is going to be a great show, and we're happy to be here. And I'm just going to be working to connect with Mr. Stanton Friedman. He's going to be giving us a call here in a minute, but let me just turn it over to Chris. Chris, thank you for joining me here in studio, setting all this up, and for being with me on Truth Warrior tonight, man.
Well, thank you. It's my pleasure, David. And it's, like David said, it's going to be a pretty interesting show with Stanton Friedman and Dr. Robert Schock, two people from whom both of us admire for their length and breadth of their work throughout the years, exposing certain truths and pushing the envelope of knowledge. And it's perfect that Stanton's actually going to be joining us on tour in Toronto on April 11th at University of Toronto as part of our Disclosure Canada tour. So Stan's going to be bringing his wealth and depth of knowledge and talking about disclosure-related issues in Canada, United States, and Commonwealth nations around the world. And then Dr. Robert Schock is going to be joining us for 3 city stops on our Modern Knowledge tour in August. He's going to be on the East Coast, Halifax, Charlottetown, and Moncton. And it's going to be awesome. He promised me he'd be bringing his rock hammer with him, and we're going to be stopping off at the side of the highways and doing some, impromptu geology along the way. So
we'll see what Canada has to offer in terms of evidence of ancient civilizations here.
Maybe it's all buried in the Bay of Fundy or something.
Exactly.
Right? So,
and we're going to discover it right on the tour. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. So.
That's great. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the other dates and the other speakers while we're waiting for Stan to connect here. We've got, let's put it this way. I'm going to explain this again for the live audience here, that Chris and I had originally had a tour booked with Michael Tessarian to come live to Canada, which we unfortunately have to postpone for the time being, just due to some medical conditions and some last minute things that Michael's been dealing with. Unfortunately, he can't fly to Canada at the time because of that. So what we're going to do is go to him and do a live broadcast, like a live stream event, professional quality. We're doing it in a nice studio there in Belfast, and that'll be live streamed around the world. So people from all over the world can interact with this event for the first time. And so in lieu of that, we are going to be doing the Canadian Disclosure Tour, and we're going to be having the likes of, of course, Stanton Friedman, who's going to be joining us tonight. And Chris, take it away. Tell us who else is joining us for that one.
Well, as we mentioned, Stanton Friedman's going to be joining us in Toronto, but we're going to be hitting 4 major Canadian cities: Montreal, Toronto, Calgary, and Vancouver. All 4 of the stops, we're going to be featuring our good friend, a person we've come to know and love now, is the Honorable Paul Hellyer.
Yeah.
He's truly a hero in my mind, and I am in yours as well, for being a politician or a rogue renegade politician who doesn't put up with anything corrupt. He is the most honest, centered man that I've ever met, and to be at the good, healthy age of 91 and have more passion and determination than David and I combined.
And clarity. Like, he's extremely, it's quite shocking, actually.
It is. It's an honor to be able to work with him. So Honorable Paul Hellyer, he's been out there on the alien ET circuit for a little while, but he just came out with a new book called The Money Mafia, A World in Crisis, where he ties in the corrupt cabal at the top of the banking system And he ties that in with our urgency to address environmental issues on the planet. And also, too, tosses in a few chapters on the whole ET disclosure issues, weaving those in a framework where disclosure on all of those issues is totally needed, and people have to become aware and have to become mobilized in order to create change and to
help bring this out. I mean, that's what this is really for. We're not trying to do this just because we want to hear Barack Obama get up on the mic and say, okay, yeah, we've been screwing you guys for all this time. We've been lying to you and all this. It's not really that. It's the effect that something like that would have on, I guess, the greater numbers of the population that are unaware of it and that sadly don't see any kind of credibility in what you might call the alternative realms of information. They look at shows like mine or researchers like what we feature here and what we're going to bring on the tour as sort of fringe. They're out on the fringes, and they're going to stay on the fringes for you unless you take the time to actually hear them out and look into the massive body of research and evidence and information that they have to share. And so this is not just us waiting for the government to disclose. We know that it's corrupt and they're not going to tell us. This is about a disclosure amongst the population that we're going to tell the media. We know, and we're sick of just being pushed aside. People want to talk about this. They're interested in it. They have a right to hear the information and then make up their own minds. We're not trying, as we said from day one with Modern Knowledge, that we're not here to try to force people into a belief system or say you have to think the way I do or you have to believe 100% of what every single person says that we bring on the tour. This is about opening up the dialogue and bringing this conversation out in a way that I believe its time has come. This is the time where we got to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, no, and I totally agree. And, with having someone with the caliber of Paul Hellyer on the tour, the credibility and the honesty that he brings, also dovetails into reaching out to the mainstream media. Now, alternative media is really the way of the future right now. Yeah. This is where a lot of people are getting their information, but there is a whole other demographic out there that is not in tune with the alternative media community. And it's those people too that have to be reached. Those are not all, but a lot of them are movers and shakers that get their information filtered from the mainstream media. And our goal is a two-prong approach. Alternative media is amazing, but it's also getting into the mainstream media, getting the word out there in the mainstream, even if they go ahead and they slam us, it's going
to get out there because the people know. If you're listening to the show right now, I mean, we might not know all the answers to all the questions, but we know something's up. We know that information is being withheld. It's being massaged. It's being guided by the media in a way that is just absolutely obscene, and it needs to stop. And so even if we get a second of credibility there and just have people think twice about it, that will hopefully encourage them to come and look at websites like truthfrequencyradio.com or modernknowledge.ca or go to Stanton Friedman's website and read his books or listen to what Paul Hellyer has to say about the banking system or whatever. So this is really just a conduit. I'm honored to be a part of it. I'm very, very excited about. We basically are going to be doing 3 rock solid events this year. This is a dream come true, man. Like this started for you and me over just, we're having a couple drinks talking about how can we do this? How can we bring our passion? How can we bring our knowledge? How can we bring the connections we have with a lot of these great researchers? How can we bring it all together? Yeah. And so we thought, let's do a road trip and a party and let's do it again. And so this is why this is happening. And I think it's going to be awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Stan's in. He's here. So let me just a quick bio for those who might not have heard of Stanton Friedman. If you haven't heard of Stanton Friedman, I don't know, you're living under a rock or something, but I'll read you his bio quickly anyways. Mr. Stanton Friedman is a nuclear physicist and a lecturer. He received his degrees in physics from the University of Chicago in 1955 and 56. He was employed for 14 years as a nuclear physicist by such companies as General Electric, GM, Westinghouse, TRW Systems, Aerojet, General nucleonics, and McDonnell Douglas, working in such highly advanced, classified, eventually canceled programs as nuclear aircraft, fission and fusion rockets, and various compact nuclear power plants for space and terrestrial applications.
That's a mouthful.
That is a mouthful. I can't believe I nailed that. He became interested in UFOs back in 1958, and since 1967, he has lectured about them at more than 600 colleges and 100 professional groups in over 50 states, 10 Canadian provinces, 18 other countries, and I'll bet you those numbers are even conservative. So this guy's got a biography a mile long. I'm going to let him come on the air and introduce himself. We're so honored to have you, Stan. I see you in the queue. Welcome to Truth Warrior, my friend.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. And don't say more than 50 states because there are only 50, guys.
The world state, though. There's the world state now, right? You've been all over the world. And
okay.
You're a very experienced, seasoned veteran in this field, and we saw that shine through at your presentations with Modern Knowledge, which were absolutely fantastic. I've uploaded that footage on our website, modernknowledge.ca, and so we're really thrilled to have you come back and do this again with us, Stan.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. Toronto in April.
Absolutely, absolutely. First off, let me
maybe there won't be a lot of snow like there is here. I don't know.
we got a lot of snow right now. You got some snow there yourself, eh?
A lot, yes, and it's cold also.
Oh well,
it's been a rough winter.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a rough one for us too. But hey, we're Canadians, Dan. We're surviving. We're staying warm. And you know what I like to do whenever I'm cold?
Yeah.
I sit inside, put the fireplace on, and I curl up with a good book. Yep. And speaking of good books, Chris, why don't you talk about Stan's book for me?
Hi, Stan. How are you? It's Christopher.
Hi, Chris.
I got your book in front of me here, Flying Saucers in Science. Is this your latest work?
Oh, good.
Tell us what you're what you're working on right now.
No, there's another one after that. Science was wrong. Originally, it was supposed to be "It's Impossible, Isn't It?" But the publisher changed the title. But and it's got 14 chapters, half by myself and half by Kathy Marden. We also did Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill UFO experience. She's Betty's niece. And each chapter was stimulated by some very smart guy saying something very stupid. A lot of that going on, you know. And so we covered medicine and space and all kinds of stuff. But and I just ran across something on the internet with somebody in Australia saying, you know, we haven't heard from anybody, so there must not be a lot of guys out there. Like we have the latest in technology. Compared to what? You know, we've had long-distance radio, Newfoundland, I will give credit to, with Marconi, since 1901. The planet's 4.5 billion years old. But, of course, we've got the most advanced technology. You know, I had a good experience with that sort of attitude. I was talking to a bunch of students in Detroit, and I mentioned how much technology has changed in my lifespan. I mean, sure, I'm an old guy, but still, it's changed a heck of a lot. And I said, look, when I started working in industry, I was using the slide rule. Looked around the audience, didn't see anybody bat an eye. So finally, I had guts enough to say, any of you know what a slide rule is? Not one person in a room full of students knew. And that's just like 40 years at that time. So it teaches you a lesson. You know, are they using AM or FM? And why would they send signals here when we have so much evidence that they're coming here in, do I dare say in person? That sounds, you can't say in alien. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it's the crazy reasoning. I just wrote a column. I do a MUFON Journal column every month. And the editor of Astronomy magazine, a guy named Eicher, cut out the UFO crap. That was a little article he did in a recent issue. And he got everything wrong. And it was incredible. Yes, a respectable journal.
Yep.
But can't the guy do his homework? I guess not. And that's the attitude of the ancient academics and fossilized physicists and SETI cultists, dare I say. I know people get mad when I say that, but SETI does stand for silly effort to investigate. And, but it's based on just what we were talking about.
Yeah.
Crazy assumptions.
If you don't,
If you're going to say, well, I'm interested in extraterrestrials, why not look at the evidence that they're coming here? You can't find the references in their books.
Mhm.
I'll tell you that.
Well, Stan, I just wanted.
Now, I will admit. Go on. I'm sorry.
No. It's thank you. You touched on the word SETI, Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. I think they're out of California. Jill Tarter and
SETI Institute.
Yeah,
Yes.
Seth Shostak. Why would you call that effort silly? I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but I wanted to explore this a little bit more with you.
When you look at the assumptions that the search is based on, they refuse to look at the evidence about UFOs. Now, I'll admit, Seth admitted he had a copy of my book. I'd sent him one on his nightstand when he was on Coast to Coast Radio. He didn't say he'd read it, of course. We did a debate on Coast to Coast, and I got 57% of the vote. He got 33%. 10% weren't sure which way. But look what it assumes, that somebody's sending signals using technology appropriate to us. We've had radio, as I say, long-distance radio since 1901. This isn't the ultimate. And why would they send a broad signal? Who are they sending it to? Oh, they're hoping to attract our attention. They know we're here. We got, thousands of physical trace cases from all over the planet, 1/6 of which involve reports of beings associated with the craft that's on the ground. We got the multiple witness radar visual sightings. These guys can't believe, well, Seth's a good example, can't believe that governments could cover anything up. He said on Larry King with me that the proof the government can't keep secrets is how FEMA fouled up with Katrina, the hurricane, down in New Orleans way and all that, and how badly the post office is run. Now, another astronomer, Dr. Who's head of Hayden Planetarium, Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Neil deGrasse, yeah.
Said the proof that the government can't keep secrets is how much we know about President Clinton's genitalia. Isn't that a wise thing? The Washington Post a little over a year ago said that the black budget for military intelligence was $52.6 billion. These guys can't imagine that there's any research going on outside of academia. I've had two guys tell me if Roswell really happenstance, come on, they would have had to pull half the physicists out of the colleges in the country. How absurd. Are they forgetting Los Alamos and Sandia and Oak Ridge and a whole bunch of other places like that? Lots of people with high-level security clearances. I've visited these places. And very smart guys. And so they're totally, it's silly. Why would you assume that you can't get here from there? Why would you assume there's no data? Well, if you don't look, they suffer from the David Susskind syndrome. He was a television guy back in the 70s, had a pretty decent program, sharp guy. But, well, I was flown to New York to be on the program. Betty Hill was on and so forth. Anyway, between segments, he says, look, I read the New York Times. There's nothing there that says these things are real. Well, he's probably right about that. But the syndrome is that if aliens were visiting, that would be important. And I would know about it because I keep track of what's important. That's what makes me a good broadcaster. So since I don't know about it, that means there's nothing there to know. And I'm not going to waste my time on finding out more. I mean, that's the whole attitude. And it's absurd. And, when I hear astronomers talk about technology, what do they know about advanced technology? Well, when I was working on nuclear rocket engines, Los Alamos tested the Phoebus 2B nuclear rocket propulsion systems, less than 8 feet in diameter. Power level was 4,000 megawatts. That's twice the power of Hoover Dam. It wasn't done at some university. Sorry, guys. When I was involved in a study of fusion propulsion for deep space travel, back in 1962, which makes me feel even older than I am. If you want to spend the dough, we know how to go. And every astronomer in the universe, including all these SETI characters, knows that nuclear fusion is what makes all the energy in the stars. Not just the sun, but billions and billions of stars produce their energy by nuclear fusion. Why would they not think of using that for propulsion? Because propulsion isn't their business. They don't know anything about it. They've got no business saying anything about it. You know, you ask the same people, you can see the use of nuclear energy. Nuclear submarines, you know, since 1956, go around the world underwater. That's pretty neat. During World War II, they could stay under for a day. Nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, they can only operate for 18 years without refueling. Think about that for a minute. That's very impressive. That's just with fission.
What do you think, Stan, about
you know, and
sorry to interrupt you there, but what do you think about the idea that there's obviously these covert operations that are going on that are, and maybe even factors that are well above what we look at as being the government or the mainstream academic research community, that there is something that is sort of kept under wraps? I mean, you were insinuating that when you were talking about Los Alamos and everything else. And we, of course, even things like the Manhattan Project or any of these other things. And now we're finding more and more that there are indeed these, I guess, clandestine activities being taking place. So
these black projects.
Black projects, really. What do you think about that?
Lots of them. Well, there certainly are lots of them, and mostly outside of academia. And the question is, when are these guys going to wake up? That's why I say it's silly.
Yeah.
You don't need to look far to find out about these things. So you've got my book there. I talk about some of these things. And I show pictures of stuff most people have never seen. And the aircraft carrier makes a good analogy here because we seem to be dealing with a two-part system. It wasn't an alien deep space craft that crashed at Roswell. It was one of the Earth excursion modules. In other words, between the stars, you've got one environment. Once you get near a planet, you got another environment. You got big gravity, you got an atmosphere, you got to worry about heating and all kinds of things. Mm. And so the aircraft carrier carries 75 little airplanes. They can go 2 hours without refueling if you're lucky. The aircraft carrier, 18 years. Two-part system, but the aircraft carrier doesn't fly worth a darn. You know, and the little jets don't work well on the water, or not for long anyway. So, you know, yes, there's a lot going on. Well, I mentioned that black budget, the three agencies that are most heavily involved in the intelligence end: CIA, NSA, and RO. And you know, we've all been told, and you'll find it over and over again, the Air Force had Project Blue Book. They closed it in 1969. But I have to keep reminding people what General Carol Bolender said. His memo resulted in the closure of Project Blue Book at the end of 69. He had nothing to do with it earlier, but he was asked as an engineer working on the Lunar Excursion Module, incidentally, what should we do about Project Blue Book? Because the University of Colorado had said it should be canceled. It's not contributing anything, and I tend to agree with that. But look what Bolender said. He said, moreover, reports of UFOs, which could affect national security, are made in accordance with JNAP, Joint Army-Navy Air Force Publication 146, or Air Force Manual 55-11, and are not part of the Blue Book system. That's an incredible statement. And then he went on 2 paragraphs later, if we close Project Blue Book, we didn't see this memo until 10 years later, incidentally. If we close Project Blue Book, the public won't have a place to report their sightings. However, as previously noted, reports which could affect national security will continue to be investigated using the procedures designed for that purpose.
Let's hold that thought right there, Stan. Sorry to interrupt you. We're just going to go to the first break of the show. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're just getting warmed up here with the one and only Stanton Friedman. We'll be back with more on the other side. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Nice to be unmuted. I like that phrase.
It's much better that way.
I wanted to finish off with General Carol Bolender. Because it's so important what he said. He said, moreover, if we cancel Project Blue Book, the public won't have a place to report sightings. However, as previously noted, reports which could affect national security will continue to be investigated using the procedures designed for that purpose. Now, you realize that the Air Force has been lying every time they've spoken out since that time, because all they say is, we closed Project Blue Book, there's no national security concern, nothing to this stuff. But I contacted Bolender. I don't know of anybody else who has. He's dead now, so I can't get him as a guest for your program, but at least I don't know how to reach the other side. I called him and asked him, I said, I read your memo with great interest. I had a clearance for 14 years. It was very interesting in what you had to say. It sounds like you were saying that there were two separate channels for communications about UFOs. One was for those reports, say a SAC base, and I use this example, where a saucer goes down the runway and nuclear weapons are stored there. By definition, that is a national security problem. And the other, if my wife and I go out at the end of the driveway and we see a UFO fly by, big deal, happens all the time. He agreed with me, two separate channels. But you won't hear anybody, I haven't seen any major media coverage of what he had to say. That's an extraordinarily important point. And you tie that in with the simple fact that the best systems for monitoring the skies belong to the government. That is to say, all those Air Defense Command radars, and Canada and the U.S. have a joint system. Nobody's got their own private radar system. Nobody's got spy satellites. No private people, as far as I know, have spy satellites checking into things. And there is a national security aspect to this whole problem. And I surprised some people by saying, I don't think everything should be put out on the table. Well, why not? Yeah. Well, suppose we've learned something from Roswell wreckage or Aztec wreckage, better ways to make a high-performance vehicle, or better ways to detect something in the atmosphere besides radar, that sort of stuff. Should we put it out on the table if the Russians and Chinese don't put out what they know? It's easy to forget. I get people saying that why don't they come and just land on the White House lawn and talk to the president? It's a no-fly zone for one thing, and the president doesn't speak for 7 billion Earthlings for another. Here we are in Canada with about 35 million people, the U.S. 310 maybe. The Chinese have 1.3 billion. Mm-hmm. Are we going to say we speak for them? I don't believe it. And we're spending this year $1 trillion, we Earthlings, on things military. So it's easy to say, why don't they tell us everything they know? What will happen then?
Yeah.
You get a whole bunch of young people pushing for a new view of ourselves instead of as Canadians or Americans or Greeks or Peruvians or whatever, as Earthlings. Obviously, from an alien viewpoint, we are all Terrans. Is that a better phrase for the science fiction fans? No government wants that. We have trouble here in Canada with, Quebec versus the rest of the country. Nationalism is the only game in town on this planet of ours. Yeah. So it's easy to say, let them tell us everything. And then what? Are we ready to take the next step?
Well, that...
stop all of... How many...
Yeah, that begs the question.
It's a tough question.
Yeah, that begs the question there, Stan, is the whole post-disclosure world. Thank you for joining us on our Disclosure Canada tour, Toronto on April 11th, the Toronto stop. Well, I just want you to speculate a little bit, and let's push this a little bit further. if the government were to disclose, number one, of course, they wouldn't tell us the truth. They're only going to tell us what we need to know in order for them to keep us under wraps. Number two, and you mentioned the billions and billions reference before, and that's Carl Sagan's
Yes.
line, and his movie Contact is one of my favorites, and it just goes to show you, and it's going on what you're communicating here about nationalism and the division on this planet. In that movie, they had to select one person to travel in the spaceship to go visit the ETs that contacted them. And that was a game show, just trying to get to select one person. So there's a whole group of people out there, and I'm sure you deal with them all the time, where they think that we have to raise our consciousness on this planet to the point where all the divisions are removed in order for us to truly make contact. I just wanted your comment on that.
Well, I think, look, I don't talk to the squirrels in my backyard. I might shout at them, get away from the flowers. So it's not in our hands. We're the peasants here. We're the squirrels. I think it's clear if you look at the events that have taken place at where nuclear weapons are stored and stuff like that. Robert Salas's book, Hastings' book, there's an awful lot of action on this planet on things military. Mm-hmm. And it looks like the aliens are concerned about that. And I wouldn't blame them, because I think people ask me, why are they coming here? I say, hey, my book, Flying Saucers and Science, there's 20 reasons for coming here, but one of them would be to quarantine us. I figure every planet in the neighborhood, every government has a prime role of securing the future for its citizens. National security, planetary security, solar system security, whatever you want to call it. That means keeping tabs on the primitives in the neighborhood, but only close tabs on those primitives to show signs of being able to bother you. You can't sit back and wait for some bunch of idiots like us. Look, we killed 50 million people in World War II, and a lot of them not very nicely. 50 million. We destroyed 1,700 cities. Are we nice guys? I mean, Isaac Asimov said they would either land and make themselves known, or they would stay hidden, and if they do neither, nobody's visiting. Like he's an expert on alien visitations. But in the real world, we are a threat to the neighborhood. And people don't realize we have exploded 2,000 nuclear weapons on this planet. Yeah. Only 2 on people, thank goodness.
But Stan, wouldn't
are we nice guys?
Well, that I wanted to ask this question: is it us as a population, the entire body of humanity? It's my perception that, given the right set of circumstances, we are nice. We are good spiritual people. We are. And it's just the control mechanisms that have been placed on us by the not so nice people have spilled over, and we get a bad rap as human beings.
Well, the planet gets a bad rap, I would say. We deserve it.
Yeah.
Spend $1 trillion on things military when there are starving children on the planet?
But is that us? Is that us spending that money? I certainly didn't sign up for that deal.
Maybe we could look at it as, at the very least, it's us, collectively allowing that to continue.
Yes.
So regardless of the fact that we've got some rotten eggs here, there's us that are the majority that are allowing the rotten eggs to control the reins of all the power centers in the world, and then influence it in that way, maybe. Yeah.
Well, remember the excuse at the concentration camps was only following orders. And I'm not blaming those guys. They had a difficult time. The 70th anniversary of Auschwitz right around now.
Yeah.
And unspeakable. But remember, my uncle was German. He came over in 1939 to the United States. His family wouldn't come, because this was, after all, the land of Goethe and Beethoven. This is high civilization Germany was. Not so high, really. They couldn't believe that other human beings could act as inhumanely as they were supposedly going to be acting, according to the rumors. But that's rumors. We've got a good life here, and we're going to stay here. And they died for their beliefs. And so it's easy to say, well, don't blame you and me. We're not terrorizing people. But look around the planet. What I'm saying is the aliens have to look at, okay, what's with these Earthlings? It's not only how many they killed in war. Every country has its own air defense command, has aircraft ready to attack anybody who they don't like. What I'm saying is it's the transition to the world of decency that's going to be so hard.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should announce that indeed the planet's being visited, and that there are international conferences that will be held that will deal with the psychological, the economic, the religious, et cetera, aspects of that fact. I was amazed when the Pope, remember, just a few years ago. There's no reason to say that the God who made us didn't also make our brethren in outer space. My first thought was, who's he been talking to?
And
in other words, I agree with you. People are nice, except the ones who aren't. And they're running the show.
Yeah, unfortunately.
They're running the show. Well, Stan, what would you say is sort of the feeling now in the mainstream? I mean, you've been interviewed on all the top shows. You've been all over the place. You've got a real feeling for where, I guess you would say, the mainstream is at in relation to this issue. Do you see any kind of movement there?
Well, yeah, I have. And I speak out very strongly, as you know. I'm not an apologist ufologist. And with one exception, I think, there have been hundreds of articles talking about it. They're not all accurate, but decent. Look, in over 700 lectures, I've had 11 hecklers, and 2 of them were drunk. And you get that many if you talk about sports, religion, politics, or whatever. I think the most common response I get these days is, well, surely we can't be the only ones. This is because of Kepler. There's been a sea change in our view of the cosmos. Yeah. Instead of us having one solar system and, we're the only planet in it and there's nothing else out there, we're the big shots. We can't be alone. Yeah. And people are recognizing that. And so I think they're right. I spoke to a meeting of the Canadian Journalism Society, whatever its fancy name is, in St. John, New Brunswick, as a matter of fact, a few years back. And the guy who arranged things told me afterwards, he said, I've never seen so many newsmen change their mind in such a hurry. They just hadn't been aware of all the evidence. Mm-hmm. So the paper I'm writing for MUFON this year in September in Irvine, California, will be making ufology respectable. How's that for a title? And, well, it's just that. Yeah. How do we make people aware that the world is a pretty friendly place, actually? And, like I say, so few hecklers that I've had. And not only that, I remember in one classroom, the professor had talked to the students before I got there, and it turned out 80% of the students thought most people didn't believe in UFOs, and yet 80% of that class did believe in UFOs. So we have that fear of ridicule, which is what seems to dominate people's attitudes about whether they want to talk or not. And I found that everywhere. People tell me about their sightings. Did you report it? No, why not? They'd think I was some kind of a nut. So even though the world's a friendly place, as long as people think it's unfriendly, they're not going to do anything to get the wrath of the audience, so to speak, of their friends. I've had couples, and afterward we sat together at dinner, and then afterward the woman says to the man, how come you raised your hand when he asked how many people had sightings? Well, I had one. Well, you never told me about it. Well, we were just married. I thought you'd laugh at me. That's husband-wife kind of thing. And so it's changing that attitude, and MUFON is pushing in the direction of, databases and so forth. But all of us have a responsibility to stick our necks out a little bit. They won't get chopped off. I'm proof positive of that. I mean, I've had academics tell me, well, don't let anybody know I'm interested. I'll lose my tenure. Yeah. Come on.
Well, it seems like no matter what you're going to do, if you're going to get on a stage with a microphone, or you're going to start a radio show, or you're going to speak your opinion in general, you're going to get hecklers, you're going to get resistance. So to those that are listening to this show, hear what Stan's talking about, because if you're passionate about this issue, if you have a voice, if you have a means of bringing the information forward, don't suppress that just because you're worried about a couple of friends and family members, throwing jokes at you. The joke's really on them, because they're missing out on one of the most fascinating subjects of our time. Wouldn't you agree, Stan?
Yes, I certainly would agree. And I think we need to have courage. Okay. Bad things happen because good people don't step in to do what needs to be done.
Right, yeah.
And that's the problem on the planet. And I'm not saying everybody should go out and give lectures about flying saucers like me. I mean, that's competition. But I think they need to be more alert. And also, there's a whole generation of people that are going to be dying soon. I mean, old guys like me and that sort of thing. I think we need more of the veterans who know stuff, who have been afraid to speak out. And I don't blame them for being afraid, because there are penalties for speaking out, for breaking security. And I get people so foolish as to say, well, those guys at MJ-12, they would have told their wives what they were doing. Of course they wouldn't. Security doesn't work that way. I never told my wife anything classified. It'd be utterly foolish, besides breaking the laws. So I think we need to wake up that in our world, we need somebody to be a Woodward Bernstein on the UFO scene, blow the lid off the cosmic Watergate, because it is a cosmic Watergate. With what Bolander said, with the blacked out and whited out CIA and NSA documents, I mean, you want dull reading, I can give you 156 National Security Agency top secret umbrella UFO documents. The only trouble is you can only read one sentence per page.
Yeah.
And I get people saying there's no cover-up. Can you read what's under the whiteout? No, I can't. And there's a whole bunch of CIA top secret umbrella documents that are almost entirely blacked out.
Yeah.
And yet we have people, even in our own field, who say, well, governments aren't keeping much secret about UFOs. Of course they are. The evidence is overwhelming that they are. And that's what Bolander meant. Reports which could affect national security. They're the exciting ones. They're the important ones. Are not part of the Blue Book system, he said. And they will continue to be investigated if Blue Book is canceled. And yet the Air Force will tell you, we're not doing anything about UFOs. Maybe they're not. Maybe it's Majestic 12, that is. I know you want to start an argument, say you believe that there is a Majestic 12, but I do believe, based on my research, my book, Top Secret Magic, goes into a lot of this. And there's an update in Flying Saucers and Science that you mentioned. Of course, they haven't released the information because it's still classified.
Yeah.
Lots of things are classified, but there was, Phil Klass paid me $1,000 for proving him wrong about 3 MJ-12 documents, or one in particular where he said it was done in the large pica type, but the National Security Council only used the small elite type. And he offered me $100 each for every genuine document done in the same size and style type. Make a long story short, he'd never been to the Eisenhower Library when he was alive anyway. I found 14 documents very easily done in the same size and style type. I sent him copies and an invoice. He said a limit of 10. Unfortunately, I'd be rich if I hadn't. And he sent me my check for $1,000. But think of the chutzpah that goes with the notion, because he's got 9 documents from the National Security Council. Well, everything out of there was done on the same typewriter. They had 250,000 pages of National Security Council material at the Ike Library. And he goes from 9 to 250,000 at the blink of an eye. This is what passes for anti-ufology. I call it the intellectual bankruptcy of the pseudoscience of anti-ufology. You know, we all need to educate the world about this.
Yeah.
And I'll take anybody on, as you know, like Michael Shermer, head of the Skeptic Society, coast to coast. I got 80% of the vote on that.
You've debated him
because he didn't know anything.
Yeah.
Well, look, I was in high school debating. I learned some rules. Stick to the facts. Stick to the truth. Don't lie. But don't be afraid to speak up.
Yeah. And now
be able to back it up.
Yeah. And that's great. And as I guess George Norrie calls you as the grandfather of ufology, is that correct? I think that's how he refers.
Well, I'm a great grandfather. I've got a great grandson.
Oh, wonderful!
He's 8 years old now.
He got promoted.
So sticking.
Well, you know, I didn't have much to do with it, obviously, but no. The thing is, if you have facts in hand before putting mouth in gear is a good rule, I think. And when somebody says something stupid, point it out. Maybe a little more gently than I do sometimes, but when people saying nobody's coming here, we haven't heard anything from anybody. Hey, did you check AM or FM or all the other possibilities? You know, and why would they send a message here? Think about that for a minute. You know, I don't randomly dial telephone numbers. There are some sales outfits that do, but who are they going to call?
Yeah.
You know, if they can come here, maybe you need to learn sign language and forget about this radio signal business.
Yeah.
You know, that's the kind of world we live in.
Yeah. We got about 4 minutes left here, Stan, remaining in this first hour. I just wanted to wrap things up with you. Seeing
sure.
The experience you have in the field of ufology and all the people you've met and all the research you've done. I know you like to stick to the facts, but I want you to speculate here a moment. And if you can tell David and I and the listeners, where do you see ufology heading in the next 10, 15 years? How do you see it evolving? And what sort of advice do you have for people that are new to the field and also to the experts out there? Just want to see if you can shape that out for us.
Well, okay. I go back to something the great Max Planck said many years ago, that new ideas come to be accepted, not because their opponents come to believe in them, but because a new generation grows up that's accustomed to them. So I think we all need to be speaking out, do more at the college level. There have only been about a dozen PhD theses done on UFOs. I think there will be much wider acceptance as we get news people, you know, the Woodward Bernsteins, as I point out, and recognize the evils of government. You know, there was quite a fuss back in the 70s when the Church Committee met, Senator Frank Church, because it turned out that there were over 300 newsmen working for the CIA. That's an incredible thing.
Yeah.
Well, we need some of those newsmen to have guts enough to dig into this subject. And, you know, we have examples when the news people didn't do their job. The New York Times knew we were going to attack Cuba at the Bay of Pigs and didn't say anything. And as Jack Kennedy once said, he wishes they had. You know, would have avoided the disaster. But I think, because of Kepler, and remember there are a couple of other super special satellites coming online pretty quick, we're going to be finding out an awful lot about the neighborhood. And, you know, people use the word intergalactic. I wish they'd ban it. The local neighborhood, there's a couple thousand stars within 54 light years. That's down the street. That's not another galaxy. There's plenty going on to learn about. And as I mentioned, nuclear fusion is real and it's still going on in all those stars out there. It's time we started using it to get us out there, if somebody will allow us to come. So I'm an optimist. I think we will have another generation. Look at John Greenwald. Now, he got really fouled up by that copyright business, but he did all that work to put all those Blue Book files online. and then he had to take them down. That's ridiculous. So we need more John Greenwalds. People with courage and competence. That's a good pair of traits, if you will. And I think I'm hopeful, partly because of the internet. And it's not that I believe everything that's on the internet, obviously. But there's much more open communication going on now than there ever was in the past. I think good ideas will come to the surface. So I'm an optimist. I think good things will happen. And we'll have somebody finally forcing the governments, it's not just ours. Look, France, Chile, other places, they're cooperating between ufologists and the government, and Peru, another one. Now, if we can get the U.S. and Canada and England, who knows? Some good things are going to happen.
Well, I'm definitely joining you in optimism, Stan. I know Chris is as well, and that's part of why we're doing this tour in Canada. We're honored to have you as a part of it, and we're so glad you're able to join us tonight on the show. So I just want to quickly thank you before we get cut off by the break. Thanks for taking this time, Stan. Stanton Friedman, ladies and gentlemen. You can check out more information at modernknowledge.ca. And Stan, we will be talking to you again soon. And ladies and gentlemen, we will